Hello there, in a hotel in Auckland this time. Just going through someone's strategic plan, actually. And this is a time of year when people ask us to either look at their strategic plans or help them create them. And so I thought I'd share with you three tests that we use on strategic plans, and you can, well, I'll see what you think. And if you want to use them on your strategic plan, then that'll be cool. And even better if you can let us know your thoughts. So the first one is purpose, and that's as simple initially as what is the purpose of this strategic plan, which sounds a bit crazy, but what we find is that some organizations create a strategic plan and it becomes very functional and they kind of lose sight of the purpose. So an example would be a manufacturing business, for example, that decides to introduce lean systems. It doesn't matter if you don't understand what that is. And they do that, they put it all in a strategic plan, and then the purpose of the plan becomes to implement lean systems. And they kind of take their eye off the ball, even at a slightly functional level, that the purpose of this activity is to increase productivity, reduce error rate, decrease the number of jobs in waiting, that kind of stuff, decrease the number of jobs that need redoing. And they take their eye off the ball, and so they congratulate themselves for implementing lean systems, but then it doesn't actually have the impact that they want to. So having a really clear idea of the purpose, the outcome of your strategic plan is a really good idea, because it lets you kind of keep an eye on whether it's actually working, because very few plans are perfect. The other way of looking at purpose is some organizations, many organizations in fact, have a really clear purpose, a really idea of mission, or they have a why. And if you've got that, that means you can look at your plan while you're building it and when you've finished it and say, is this actually going to contribute to our purpose or our mission? Okay, now that has there's two real benefits in considering the purpose. One is that we've alluded to it already. You keep your eye on the ball in terms of whether your plan is actually working. You're measuring it against your purpose. And the other reason is, particularly if you've got a real strong sense of purpose and your workforce are generally on board with that, is that given it's your people who are going to have to implement it, if you connect it really strongly to your purpose, hopefully they'll be more motivated to implement it, but also more willing and creative to actually adjust things on the ground and make it work. Because as I've said, very few plans work first time, do they? Okay, the second test we use is coherence. Okay, and you're going to think nobody does that, surely, but it does happen. And I'll give you a really good example at the end of all three of these going wrong. So coherence is about for example, if we're introducing this lean system, so we're changing the way that manufacturing is working, and at the same time in another strand or pathway, as we call it in your strategic plan, you've got maybe the accounts team, I don't know, implementing a new system for tracking certain indicators and reporting on them. That's fine, as long as you don't get to the point where, this side goes along and produces the monitoring, the tracking and monitoring and reporting system, and then because of the changes in manufacturing, it doesn't work. Or these guys over here need a new piece of software, and these guys over here need a new piece of software, and then you finish up that the two bits of software don't talk to each other, which of course never happens. And so it's whether all the parts of the plan fit together in a coherent way. So somebody needs to look at the plan as a whole, as it's developing as a whole, just to make sure that the whole thing fits together. Now, the third one is about flow, and this is a little bit like coherence, but it's slightly different. So if we stick to the same example, do we want to introduce this kind of tracking process and then start the thing in manufacturing so that we can track how well it's doing? Or do we want to do the stuff in manufacturing and then think about how we're going to design a system to track that? Okay, so this is about your pathway through the various different things. So you don't have this pathway and this pathway and this pathway, or strand if you want to call them that, and then say, go, everybody. And people do that. Okay, here's that example that I said I was going to give, and I think I alluded to the fact that it's a terrible example of strategic planning, and it really highlights these three things, or rather the lack of them in this case. But just to make life easy for myself, I've cheated, because if you're looking for truly unbelievably terrible examples of strategic planning and implementation, then you look no further than the world of politicians. But I'm not making a political point here, because I credit all politicians of every shade with equally remarkable abilities to strategic plan, he says sarcastically. So most people, rational people at least, would agree that for decades, if not a couple of hundred years, we've been pumping gases into the atmosphere that are really harmful to the atmosphere, which in turn is causing all kinds of things, changes in terms of our climate, which in turn is warming up the sea, melting ice caps, causing really unusual weather events. You've only got to look in the US right now. And we need to do something about it. And there is no doubt that a big contributor to those harmful gases is vehicles that are driven by combustion engines fueled by diesel and petrol. So the previous government in New Zealand, like many around the world, said, okay, on this date, we're going to stop importing, because we import all our cars, vehicles that are powered by combustion engines fueled with diesel and oil, and diesel and petrol, sorry. Okay, sounds like a good idea. They'd also got rid of coal mining, which sounds like a good idea. They've also decided to gradually, well, actually turned out quite quickly, reduce local generation or production of gas and oil. And all of those sound like really good ideas. Okay, there's a but, isn't there? You see, if they'd said, okay, we want to electrify our vehicle fleet, let's just take that example, and this is how much electricity we're producing right now, and in New Zealand we only just about produce what we need in terms of electricity. If we can electrify our vehicle fleet, this is how much we're going to need to produce. So here is our 20-25 year plan to increase our capacity for power generation, reliable power generation, and then at these points along that line, we're going to reduce gas, we're going to start the process of banning import of combustion engine vehicles, that kind of stuff. So it has coherence and it has flow, but they didn't do that. And now we find ourselves with these isolated, although seemingly good decisions made that are completely disconnected from other parts of the strategic plan that actually doesn't exist. And we're now importing Indonesian coal and burning, I think, more coal than we've ever burnt to generate electricity. And it's crazy, isn't it? You can see how frustrated I am. And the present clowns have come in and said, oh, that's okay, we'll switch gas back on, which I mean, companies are not going to come in and start drilling for gas again, are they, if they think it's going to get switched off again by the next government? And apparently it'll take 10 years and we don't even know if we've got any. It's just crazy, isn't it? Okay. So you can really see that lack of coherence and that lack of flow. But the other thing you've got to question is purpose. Because if the purpose was genuinely to, reduce our impact on climate change, then surely there would be a coherent and flowing strategy that everybody would agree with. So what is the purpose then? And given these are short-term decisions, not thought out, not coherent, not in a flow, perhaps it's just to get votes at the next election, as if. Anyway, interested to hear your thoughts.